Hi, this is Karen Bobian. I'm going to be walking you through how to view the WMBT data off of the T3 Barley website today. So, first of all, we're going to start at Google. I'm just going to be treating everybody as if you're first-time T3 users. So for some of you, this is going to be somewhat redundant. So if you're to navigate to the website, we're just going to go to T3 Barley and search, and it'll come up right away for T3 Barley, the Treatise Toolbox, and that brings you right to the home page. So eventually you'll see up here in the upper left-hand corner that there is a place to log in and register, but once again, we're just going to treat this like everyone is a first-time user and you don't have a login yet. So I'm going to show you what you can do without a login, just so that everybody can access the data. So first, to see what we have in there for the WMBT data, we're going to search phenotype trials by experiment. And we're going to look over the general data. So if we click the down arrow here for search phenotype trials by experiment, and then cast down. This is the first time I'm doing a screencast, everybody, so bear with me. I'm actually going to select WMBT, and it's the very last one on the list, which is off of the recording, so I'm sorry about that. Then what you can see is this shows you the overview of all of the trials from Experiment WMBT. If you saw on that page before, you can view the data in different ways, like look at everything from 2015 or look at everything from a certain location like North Dakota, but this allows you to see everything from this one experiment that we're interested in. So if we scroll through this list, the trials from Experiment WMBT, you can see everything from all the trials that are entered thus far. So for the 2015 trials, we have 19 locations entered as expecting data. For 18 of those locations, data is in. I don't have data entered yet for Alma. And then I just got data in from Utah, and so that isn't even entered as a location yet, so there will be more locations. For 2014, at this point in time, I don't have the data, or the data is sent to T3, but it isn't in the system yet. But perhaps by the time you look at this, you'll see a list of traits behind in these slots behind the locations. Now, if you want to get more information on the individual locations, what you can do is mouse over the location itself and click. And what that'll tell you is, once again, the experiment is WMBT, and then you can look at where the location is. So if you're not familiar with Aberdeen, Idaho, you can look at the latitude and longitude. It'll give you the collaborators' names and then things like planting date. If we scroll down, you can get the raw data for that location and all of the lines that were entered. You can also download the trial data for each of the separate locations if you want to look at a specific location. If we go back, this can help you out, especially if you're not familiar or you want more information on where each of these separate locations are located. You can click on each of these separate locations, and it gives you a better idea of the spread of where our trial is happening across the U.S. Another thing to note here is that in the list of traits that are taken at each location, you'll notice, for example, Aberdeen has grain yield, plant height, winter hardiness, heading date in Julian, and lodging degree. That lodging degree is very important because in T3, all of these trait names have a very specific meaning. And in order to know what your trait name means, you can go to About Trait T3, go to Trait Descriptions, and then look up what your actual trait means, what the actual trait title means here. So for example, if we scroll down, here's heading date in Julian. So that's the Julian calendar date of anthesis of approximately 50% of spikes. So one of the ones that came up a few times when I was looking over the data, came up quite a bit, is lodging. There's two different types of lodging notes on this. Actually, I should say that, well, okay, two different types of lodging notes and then a straw breakage note. So lodging, when it just says lodging, that's measure of a percentage of plants that lodged. Lodging degree is the degree of lodging in a plot on a 0 to 9 scale. And then straw breakage is a measure of percentage of plants with broken straw. So you just have to, if you have any questions about the title of a trait, then you have to go to this page, this About T3, then Trait Descriptions, and that'll help you understand exactly what you're looking at. So another example, if we go all the way to the bottom of the page, here's all the winter growth habit traits, and here we see that percent survival, which is the score we've been taking. In T3, it's known as winter hardiness. So that's where all of your percent survival notes are. They're noted as winter hardiness. Okay? So now let's look at what the actual data looks like. And for that, we're going to look at the example trait of grain yield. So for that, if you mouse over the select tool, that's how we're going to select our trait, our lines and our traits to look at grain hardiness. So go to select and then to wizard. And actually for this, you just want to hover over each of these things. Hover over select, hover over wizard, and then click on wizard. And now once again, because we're more interested, our largest thing that we're selecting on is that everything is in the same collaborative trial. Our biggest selection is that we're actually selecting by experiment. So our number one selection is experiment. Then we're going to go to the bottom, and everything we're selecting is in the WMBT. Right now we only have data in the system for 2015, so we're going to choose 2015. And we're going to choose all the trials. So if we were only choosing a few trials, you could hit the control button and select multiple trials. Or in this case, since we want them all, you can hit the shift button and select the top one and the bottom one. And then our trait is going to be grain yield. And now notice when I select grain yield, then automatically all of the lines in the trial for the year 2015, they appear. And right here we have a summary. The current data selection is the 28 lines we grew in the 2015-2016 WMBT trial, and we have one trait selected, that's grain yield. So we're going to save this selection. And once we hit selection, then something changed up here in the left-hand corner. All of a sudden it says we have 28 lines selected, one trait selected, and 19 phenotypic trials. So once again, these 19 phenotypic trials that we chose, that was right here under the trials. The one trait we selected was here under traits, and the 28 lines we selected were selected in the last slot for lines. Okay? So now we want to actually see our data or analyze it. So we're going to hover over Analyze. We're going to hover down to Traits and Trials Statistics, and then go across to Traits and Trials Table, and then I'm going to select that. And what that brings us to is a summary of traits values in selected trials. Up above, we're going to see an LS means table, which is the means for all of the lines. That gives you just your general means. And once again, this is in kilograms per hectare because that's what T3 requires. So that's why things might look a little different than what you're used to. Pretty high numbers if you were thinking this was bushels per acre. And then down below, you can see all of the locations separately. So it gives you an idea of how the locations compare to each other and also what the trends are for the lines across locations. And then once again with LS means at the end. You can also view your data visually. If you go to the Analyze function again, just hovering over it, back to Traits and Trials Statistics, you can go to Traits and Trials Histogram, click on that, and then a grain yield histogram. It will create a histogram of the data for each location. So it gives you an idea of what the data or the quality of the data for each location. So here's one thing one analysis tool that is available through the website. And another, if we go back to Analyze again, back to Traits and Trials Statistics, to the Traits and Trials box plot. Once again, it gives you a box plot for each location. And gives you a summary of or an idea of the quality of the data for each location. In this case, for the box plot, it's also giving you a box plot for those locations that didn't have grain yield data. So just keep that in mind when you see something like this for Laurel Springs or Alma or Alberg. And now if we go back to Analyze and look at the data itself in the table form, at this point in time, the best way for you to keep this for yourself is actually to mouse over and copy it into Excel. If you would like there to be a download function, we'll have to work with T3 on that. And please give your feedback if that's something that you would prefer. So there are a few other things that I'd like to show you, and due to how long this tutorial is getting, what I'm going to do is stop the first part of the tutorial now and start up a second tutorial in the same place where we are and show you a few ways that you can customize these tables to your own region or customize to certain lines that you're looking for, customize to certain locations that you're looking for, things to make it more useful for you. So hopefully you'll be interested in looking at the second tutorial also. Thanks!